What's going on, YouTube? It's Tej back again, and today we're going to talk about my mid-season award predictions slash picks. This is pseudo predictions and then half, what I think the winners of these awards should be through, a little bit more than 8 weeks into the season. I do know week 9 has officially started, so we're technically like halfway through the season, but we've only had the Thursday night game, so I don't know. With 17 games in a season, there's no perfect midway point, so let's just do it now. So we'll go through Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Players of the Year, Coach of the Year, MVP, all that sort of fun stuff. Comeback Player of the Year as well. So let me hear your award predictions slash picks, and if you want to differentiate that down below in the comment section, this is who my Rookie of the Year would be. This is who I think will win the award. That's totally fine. Would love to hear y'all's selections and predictions down below. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Hit that like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content like this. We're talking about 5 names for every award. Let's waste no time and jump right into it. I'll probably go 5 up to 1 with all these awards, but with Rookie of the Year, this is tough because Devon Achane could come back healthy and even on 10 touches a game have gaudy stats. Part of it's the offense, which, I wonder how much voters will bake that in. And part of it's, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and just kind of the force multiplier effect they have. So he's just got crazy stats. So depending on, how quick he comes back, how healthy he stays the rest of the year, could be a guy with insane box score numbers that kind of puts himself in this conversation. Jordan Addison, obviously no Kirk Cousins, makes this a lot harder because Josh Dobbs is just not going to make you, have as many insane receiving box scores that he's had over the last 2 weeks. But nonetheless, as long as Justin Jefferson's out, he's the number 1 target. And then when JJ comes back, JJ is going to get all the attention. And Jordan Addison's shown that he can win one-on-ones and win as the primary target. So making him the secondary guy, that feels like he's going to have a lot of advantageous matchups. So I still think the numbers are going to be pretty good, but obviously this does take a, kind of a ding with Kirk Cousins going down for the season. Otherwise, I probably would have flipped him and Bijan. Bijan comes in at 3 because, despite Arthur Smith not wanting to use his best players for whatever reason, he's still in a very run-heavy offense with a very good blocking offensive line in front of him. Even if they're not as good as they were last year, it's still towards the top end of the league, and he's a freak himself. And plus you throw in the receiving side of it, all the arguments people made preseason for Bijan Robinson to be Offensive Rookie of the Year, it's still live midway through the season, so I'm not going to take him out of the top 5. Then we get to the real standouts. Puka Nacua, who's setting records for most catches through 2 games, most targets through 5 games as a rookie, all that sort of stuff. Crazy numbers, and then, the Steelers take away a Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua shines, showcasing that it's not just going to be one or the other in this offense. They can coexist, and when Cooper Kupp is, the target of a defense, Puka Nacua can step up. And then if you take away Puka Nacua, you got to deal with Cooper Kupp. So, love what I've seen from him. It is interesting to see how much he can win despite not being the world's greatest athlete. I think he's kind of the perfect guy for that offense. Sharp right runner, sure hands, and, he's got good timing with Matt Stafford. So, really been impressive this year, but ultimately, CJ Stroud's going to be the number 1 pick for me here. Part of it is position value. You have to take into account quarterback versus wide receiver. Look no further than the 2020 Rookie of the Year race between Herbert and Jefferson, where they're both putting up insane numbers, but quarterback wins out. So that's kind of where I stand right now on CJ Stroud. His processing has been fantastic, and honestly, I think the accuracy numbers have room to improve. So Scott could end up getting better over the second half of the season. Really love the offense he's playing in with Bobby Slowick calling plays. Tank Dell's a stud as a rookie. Nico Collins having a breakout season. Still got Dalton Schultz there. And ultimately, the offensive line's been pretty good. So, CJ Stroud, even in games where he's not all-world, he's still been very, very impressive, given the fact he's a rookie. So then we get on to Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm going to go Devon Witherspoon. I do hope to have that slot video out tomorrow. I do apologize if it doesn't come out tomorrow, then definitely the next week. Just time, and my week is flying by. So haven't been able to put as much time and effort into that as I would have liked, but still hoping to get that done with some work tonight to be able to put that out tomorrow on Sunday. But look, simply put, Devon Witherspoon is one of the reasons I'm making that video. He has been awesome out of the slot. And Seattle's defense was already working in the right direction last year. I think Devon Witherspoon, that addition, especially with him playing in the nickel, has kind of taken him to a status where all of a sudden the pass rush is really starting to hit home because there's nowhere to go with the football. And he's also a great football player. He wants to make plays at the line of scrimmage. He wants to inflict harm to ball carriers. He wants to hit hard despite being 5'11", 180. So he's just kind of got that Pete Carroll mindset, and the impact he's made both in the passing game, but also as a tackler. I think he kind of makes him a clear-cut number 1 guy here. And the reason I do put him over Carter, because, maybe looking at who's done more with each play, you can make an argument Carter should be the winner here. He's doing it on what's going to be pacing out to less than 500 snaps this year. So he's kind of doing it in a rotation, which isn't an issue, and there's still merit for, hey, this guy's putting up insane numbers even if it is in a smaller role. And he's just winning all the time. He's great in the run game. He's a dynamic pass rusher too. All that stuff can be true. I just prefer the guy who's doing it on, a true full-time, every down basis. So that's kind of why I gave Witherspoon the nudge over Carter. I think they've both been fantastic. But if you're going solely off of like who's done more with each play and taking the sample size, the number of plays out of the equation, maybe you give this to Carter. Then we get to Will Anderson at 3. And he's been super impressive, man. He's been really solid against the run. Immediate impact as a pass rusher. He's already the Texans' best pass rusher, simply put. I just think Witherspoon's already top 3 at his position. I think Jalen Carter on a full-time role is top 5 at the IDL spot, which I know is a lot to say because Dexter Lawrence is a freak and Christian Wilkins is awesome. Aaron Donald still exists. Chris Jones is fantastic. Jeffrey Simmons. But I think like Jalen Carter is probably like right behind Dexter Lawrence. He's probably like IDL 5. I might be forgetting one other guy that I'm going to like kick myself over as I say this, kind of thinking without a whim. But he's already in that top 5-ish kind of range, the position. He just does it on a smaller snap count. And I don't think Will Anderson's quite there yet, but he has been an instant impact guy. And I mean, the ceiling is pretty high for this guy. So really excited to see where he goes in years 2, 3, 4, and beyond. Then we get Brian Branch, Joey Porter Jr. Brian Branch, kind of in that same spot with Devin Witherspoon, where I think he's already one of the best players at the slot corner position. I think there's a little bit more flash that's been there for Witherspoon. Branch could ultimately move up this because the Lions are going to be a really good team. Same can be said about Seattle. I just think more of the credit pie is going to probably end up in Witherspoon's lap for Seattle's defensive success than a Brian Branch. I think a lot of that's going to be preoccupied with Aaron Glenn and then also Aiden Hutchinson. So I feel like he's going to be a little overlooked there. That's kind of the difference in what I have here. And as good as Branch has been, I think Witherspoon just maybe ever so slight has been a little bit better. And then we get to Joey Porter Jr. And back to that point, maybe if I could say Branch's top 3 slot already, maybe I should have flipped him and Will Anderson. I'm fine with that argument if you want to make that. Then Joey Porter Jr., I was like, maybe I should put a prediction guy here at 5. And he's starting to get more snaps. Granted, the Thursday night game against the Titans, I mean, the guy was riddled with flags being thrown against him. So not great, not perfect. That being said, so does Patrick Peterson. So, it's not going to get any worse. And that's really kind of my argument here is he's looked pretty good when he's gotten on the field. The Thursday night game was probably the roughest that we've seen. And, of course, it's also the game that it feels like he's played the most in. So that's not great. But I think the opportunity is going to be there down the stretch. And Pittsburgh needs somebody to step up. He's got the traits. He's got the size. And I think the change of direction skills have been more prevalent on his Steelers tape than I saw at Penn State, which has been great because that was a little bit of a concern I had with him as a prospect. But overall, he's played pretty well, and I think he's got the opportunity and the starting job moving forward for Pittsburgh. So chances are going to be there. All right, now let's talk about comeback play of the year. I'll be pretty quick on this one because it's obvious. And of course, we're on the Friday eve. You're seeing this on Saturday, so true game day eve of Damar Hamlin returning to Cincinnati. So I mean, the guy has an insane story. As crazy as the Alex Smith injury, was, and remember them doing like a 30 for 30 on that. Like Damar Hamlin kind of takes it to another level. So he's going to win this award. So there's not really a whole lot to talk about. Tua is totally deserving. Missed a handful of games last year with the concussion, and man, especially with his processing. You can see why, those head injuries are, such a big concern, and that's why it's been so awesome to see him stay healthy and be able to execute that offense at such a high level. So Tua definitely deserving, but, the injury extent is not quite as intense as Hamlin. Lamar Jackson missed some time last year. He's playing like an MVP candidate. We'll talk about him later on. Breece Hall has been, especially with Zach Wilson under center, kind of the lifeline of that Jets offense, him and Garrett Wilson. Any big plays kind of run through those two guys. And he's been awesome, and he's generated a ton of big plays. I mean, had the 50-yarder against the Giants, and that 10-7 win, an absolute sweat against a team that threw for -9 passing yards. Those are the types of plays that the Jets are leaning on, and Breece Hall, is providing them. And then Cooper Kupp missed a good portion of last year, and since his return, he's been awesome. In the games he's been quiet, it's because he's gotten so much attention that it's freed up Puka Nacua in turn. So some of the production that Puka gets is almost as a result that Cooper Kupp is so good, and teams are back to respecting him and making him the focus of their defensive, game plan. So his impact's been felt both in the box score, but also like the gravitational pull and how it opens up other guys like a rookie like Puka Nacua. Offensive player of the year, I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey. I mean, this guy's scored in 17 straight games now. I mean, that's bananas. But they're using him in the pass game. They're using him in the run game. He's their lead back. And I mean, you name it, he makes it happen. And especially, I think, depending on where the rhetoric goes the rest of the season with Brock Purdy, like, is he good? Is he bad? Is he just, a product of having a good system and a lot of playmakers around him? We'll see where that narrative goes. But if it does kind of tend to where it's been for the last 3 weeks, the 49ers are losing games, Brock Purdy's not great, he's elevated by the situation, well, then the argument kind of makes itself that Christian McCaffrey is one of maybe the biggest of that supporting cast that makes his, world go round, right? Like, I think it's him and Trent Williams and then probably Brandon Ayuk. If you want to argue wide receiver position value over running back, I don't hate the argument that Ayuk maybe means a little bit more than CMC, but I think CMC's receiving value makes him the number 2 guy right there with Trent Williams. And that's still a lot to say about Brandon Ayuk. And, maybe I'll do like a most underrated or breakout candidates or breakout names list down the line, because I think Brandon Ayuk has kind of moved in my top 10 receiver, list, because he's had an awesome season. So he's got to right up there with CMC. But anyways, getting back on track here, just how they're using him in the full assets of what he could potentially do as a running back. Shanahan's maximizing his value. He's finding the end zone. That's also a key stat that a lot of voters look to. Who scored the most touchdowns this year? Boom, offensive player of the year. So it's a little lazy if you ask me, but I also think he deserves the award. And then Tyreek Hill's like right behind him. Like, the impact that Tyreek's had, it has been awesome. And especially now that Tua, knock on wood, has stayed healthy, you can see the full potential of it. And I mean, like, he's getting bracketed coverage, I think it was the Philadelphia game, and he just ran by both guys. Like, this is the type of dude that we're talking about. This is the type of guy that he's been for the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So, Tyreek Hill's being Tyreek Hill. He stayed healthy. Tua's staying healthy. He's going to have insane numbers. Feels like he's on, a pretty solid pace for more than 2,000 yards this season. So, if he clears that all-time, single season receiving record, this might be his award to win. And then A.J. Brown has been a monster of late. 6 consecutive games with 125-plus receiving yards. He's fine in the end zone. And, I think a lot of people would agree the Eagles haven't put together that perfect game. Like, they hit on all cylinders and no complaints, no notes. It's fantastic. Complete effort. But in this time where they haven't really had that, A.J. Brown has just kind of made you forget about it, because it's like, oh yeah, they can just throw it to him, and good things happen when they throw it in the direction of A.J. Brown, and he'll make one-handed catches in the corner of the end zone against the Commanders. And I will say, part of the reason he's been hot, no doubt, but like, having 2 of his last 3 games against the Commanders definitely helps, because that's a team he just consistently dominates against. So we are writing a little bit of a schedule high for him too, it feels. But he's also been fantastic. And him and Tyreek Hill, like, the best receiver, of the last 6 weeks, it's kind of hard to tell between those two. They just kind of do it in different ways. But A.J. Brown's been fantastic. Travis Kelce at 4, and we'll kind of talk about this when we get to MVP with Pat Mahomes. But, the catch-22 is he's awesome. He's the best tight end in the football in the league, and he's putting up insane numbers, right? Like, I mean, the box score speaks for itself, and I don't think anybody's looking at that and saying, no, those are false stats. Like, no, Kelsey's earning it. I know the whole, I'm not going to go into the split of with and without, Taylor Swift, whatever, that doesn't matter. Really, almost what that leads me to concern about, and why he's 4 and maybe not a little bit higher, is like, we already knew he was the number 1 target in Kansas City, but I think they've hit another level to it, where it's like, not only is he the number 1 target, and we all acknowledge that, they can't win games where he's not putting up insane numbers. Like, I feel like there's going to have to come a point this year where the Chiefs win a game with Kelce having less than 50 receiving yards in a game. And I just don't know if they have the wide receivers to make that happen. So, the argument for Offensive Player of the Year is the Chiefs are going to force feed him if that's true. The downside of that is, like, he's going to have all the attention in the world on him to force Rashee Rice, to force Kadarius Toney, to force Sky Moore to beat you otherwise. So, this could kind of break one of 2 ways. Either he gets force-fed and has insane numbers and he wins this award, or he gets so much attention he can't get open. There's nothing for him to do, and the Chiefs kind of hit a little bit of a bump in the road because they don't have anybody else who can win other than Travis Kelce. And then Jamar Chase, the Bengals are just red hot right now, so we'll kind of talk about this with Burrow in the MVP conversation, but they're hot right now. And, the Bengals were my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl. Burrow is my preseason MVP, and if they're clicking like they were against San Francisco, a lot of good things could come. So obviously the numbers could then pile up for Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Defensive Player of the Year, I'll go Myles Garrett. The man's a freak. He deserves the award. He's had multiple seasons where he's been in this consideration, and I think everybody recognizes he's a Defensive Player of the Year type of talent, but I think this is the year where it happens. The sacks are there, the hurries are there, the stops there. That's a metric that PFF uses to calculate value in the run game, making a stop, half of the yards to gain towards first down, basically. So if it's 1st and 10, making a stop for less than 5 yards, 2nd and 8, less than 4 yards, so on and so forth. But also, like, a blocked field goal out of a 3-point stance against the Colts. The man is just an alien, and he's just pulling off whatever he can to will the Browns to wins, especially with Deshaun Watson not under center. So he's been a huge impact player, which he is every year. But with the other supporting cast on the defensive line, we're seeing more of those pressures turn into sacks, which also goes a long way for these Defensive Player of the Year voters. Micah Parsons is no slouch. He's right behind him. So a lot of the same stuff said about Myles Garrett. Micah Parsons does the exact same stuff for the Dallas Cowboys. This is going to be a close race between these two. There's really no strong lean I have, other than it feels like, hey, Garrett's been in the league for a while. He deserves this award. So I'm kind of giving the older guy the courtesy bow here, so to speak. Aiden Hutchinson was actually on this list. Actually, top 1 through 5, 1 through 4 on this 5-man list. I didn't change a thing. The only thing I did was change the picture. And you can go back to my preseason awards if you think I'm capping. But 1 through 4, this is the exact same as I have it right now. Aiden Hutchinson's been awesome this year, and he's on his way to a 15-plus sack type of season. And he's the focal point of that Lions defense. Like where I said I think Brian Branch is going to get a little overlooked. It's because of Aiden Hutchinson, because he's a great story. He's an in-state kid taken out of Michigan, goes to Detroit, and his family's NFL legacy there with his dad, and they're kind of a cool story in and of itself. And then he's just playing out of this world right now. So in the second-year players seen him take that leap. Sometimes the league's a little bit, they're about a year delayed. So I could see Brian Branch kind of getting the same hype in his year too that Hutchinson's getting now in his second season. So and I think he's probably a step down from Garrett and Parsons level elite. And you could throw TJ Watt in this mix for sure. I just don't want to come across as a biased Steelers fan, but Crosby there at 5, TJ Watt both make sense. Hutchinson there at 3, totally deserving. Chris Jones is the game wrecker for Kansas City, both from the inside, but also like taking 5 to 10 snaps a week, basically just picking on right tackles. He's awesome there. He's been fantastic in the run game as well. I mean, he is the focal point of that Chiefs defense, and he is the reason. He's one of the reasons. Him and Trent McDuffie to me are the chieftain reasons, for no pun intended, why that Kansas City defense is actually a really solid unit, maybe a little under the radar for a lot of people who just, casual fans say, oh, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, they win with their offense. This season, yes, some of that is true, but actually I think a lot of that credit pie needs to be given to that defense. Spagnola's doing a great job. McDuffie's been an impact player. Again, why I want to make that slot cornerback position video. And Chris Jones is a big part of that too. So he's got to be in here at 4. And again at 5, TJ Watt, Max Crosby. I'm fine with either one. Didn't want to come across as the biased Steelers fan. TJ Watt's also already won the award. So wanted to get some different guys who haven't gotten the award yet. And also look, the Raiders defense is playing above expectations single-handedly because of 98 in black and silver. It's Max Crosby. It's his world, and we're living in it. Week in and week out, if you watch the Raiders, Max Crosby's making plays left, right, center. He's getting forced fumbles. He's ripping the ball out. He's getting sacks. He's stopping the run game. And I mean, it feels like he's everywhere. It's insane. He'll rush from one side of the field, and somehow wherever the ball is, Max Crosby's right there too. So yeah, he's had an unbelievable season, and I think he's got the most pressures in the NFL since he came to the league. And this season has just been more of that. So I want to give him his flowers here. I want to give him his kudos. Definitely think he deserves to be on this list. Honestly, this is such a tough award because across the league, Dexter Lawrence, another guy that there's probably an argument he should be somewhere here in the top 5 too. So there's 7, 8, 9 guys that you put them here 1 through 5. I don't hate it whatsoever, and I just want to get Crosby in to talk about him a little bit. Coach of the year, and then we're on MVP. So Coach of the year, I'll go Dan Campbell. I think the league really wants the Lions to be a huge talking point this season. They had that season opening game against the Chiefs. They win, right? And I mean, I give a ton of credit to Dan Campbell, and especially as I think the analytics movement has really kind of caught on with casuals. I can't remember where I saw it, but actually I think JT and I had talked about it on the Hurry Up Offense. If you missed that this week, definitely check it out. It's up on the channel now. But basically, there was an article out there weighing and measuring who has made the most correct, quote unquote, analytical decisions. Who has leaned on the numbers most? Dan Campbell's there at 1. So I think that's another reason we're going to start to see analytics, 1, become more prevalent, and 2, Dan Campbell get the praise that he does deserve, in my book, to be Coach of the Year. So right now, he's my pick. It's definitely close between him and Mike McDaniel. I just think the league wants the Lions to be a big talking point, to be a big success story this season. And really, you could almost look at this as a 3-year arc award for Dan Campbell. Look at where the Lions were when they hired him. And now, if the NFC North wasn't already their division, Kirk Cousins tearing his Achilles ensures the Lions are going to be the NFC North champs. So I think that's going to be something that, the first time the Lions have won that award in X amount of years, all that, rhetoric and narrative is going to be out there leading to Dan Campbell winning this award. Mike McDaniel comes in at 2. I think we got to see Mike McDaniel in that offense. So expectations were higher, I think, this year for the Dolphins than they were for the Lions. So, if the Dolphins meet those expectations, that's awesome. I think the Lions are going to go a little bit beyond the expectations maybe that were set after last year. But that could be tough too, because depending on where you set that bar for Detroit after they went 9-8 a season ago. So they're both close. Dan Campbell, Mike McDaniel, I have no qualm if you have this flipped. I think ultimately the league is going to want Dan Campbell to win this award. So call this more of a prediction than my pick, but I'm fine with either one of these two coming out on top. D'Amico Ryan's another guy that, I think Houston has a chance to, we'll see where this wild card race goes. And we'll see what other injuries pop up, right? Don't rule out Houston, finish the season strong and maybe sneak in as the 7th seed. And if they do that, D'Amico Ryan's got a hell of a case. And I think everyone is looking at it and being yeah, that impact has been immediate. Both him and Bobby Slowick. There's just so much more to that roster in general, but like efficiency, and there's just so much more structure. And it feels like all of a sudden those pieces like a Nico Collins that were quiet, oh well, now Bobby Slowick's got them in a breakout season. And this offensive line where it's like, yeah, there's talent there, but they don't really perform all that well. Okay, well that's not an issue anymore. Then on the defensive side, it's Jonathan Grenard getting the best matchup, Steven Nelson kind of having a renaissance type of season, and it's Blake Cashman coming out of nowhere, getting coached up by D'Amico Ryans, having a career season, high talent guy coming out of the draft, but never really has put the production to it. So yeah, I can totally see D'Amico Ryans, that player development, and all of a sudden these guys flipping that switch and fully hitting their potential. He's going to get a lot of that credit. And then Robert Saleh, Mike Tomlin. Look, Saleh's winning games despite Zach Wilson. Wilson may be playing better than what he was last year, but they're still winning games despite him. That defense is fantastic. It's hard to see a defense be the best in the league 2 years running, and I think the Jets are right there in that conversation with Cleveland to basically do what they did last year and be crowned as the best defense in the NFL. And he deserves a huge credit, a huge part of that credit. But also just like handling adversity, right? Like if you don't believe in a script, like maybe Rodgers going down 4 plays of this season, and all of a sudden there's a brand new surgery that's going to get him back for the postseason. Maybe that's your reason to believe in the script. Or if you don't believe in it, you're like, dude, that's as bad a draw as you could possibly get. Now you're leaning on this like brand new procedure to hopefully get Rodgers back for the postseason. There's a lot of things being juggled in the face of Robert Saleh right now, and also just keeping morale up. So maybe they do get to the postseason, and maybe they do get to see Aaron Rodgers. Like he's got a lot of things that are a lot of challenges to handle. So, and I think Robert Saleh has done it really, really well while they're still winning games with a very poor quarterback play. So yeah, Saleh got to be in this running here. And then Mike Tomlin, simply put, there's now 34 teams in NFL history since the 30s that have been outgained in every game they played through 8 weeks. And furthermore, the Steelers have been they've been outgained in every game. They have run less plays than their opponents in every game, and they've had less first downs than every opponent they played in every game. And they're 5-3. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And getting back to that point, they're the 34th team in NFL history to be outgained in the first 8 games of the season. And they're the first team of the 34 to have a winning record. Had to put Mike Tomlin on this list, even as, a Steelers fan who's a little frustrated with no moves on Matt Canada or whatever. The Steelers are winning games despite that offense, and Mike Tomlin's going to get a ton of credit for that. And then we get to MVP. If you were to ask me maybe through 8 weeks who should win this award, I'd probably give you Lamar Jackson. So call the Patrick Mahomes pick here a little bit of a prediction, but I think the rhetoric's going to be kind of similar to what it was last year, where, man, if it's Travis Kelce and then Mahomes just kind of engineering the rest with the wide receivers. And I do think the receivers ultimately will get a little bit more consistent down the stretch. Hopefully we see a little bit more Rashee Rice. We'll love to see a move at the deadline like a DeAndre Hopkins or something like that. But I'm going to stick with Mahomes. He's still the best player in the league to me. And I think ultimately Reed's going to find a way to have Kelce consistently be a factor, and that's why I had him on the Offensive Player of the Year, 1 through 5. And then I think they're going to have some receiver step up. So I think Mahomes is going to be fine. Also, he had the flu game last time we saw him, so it's kind of a tough last taste in your mouth when I'm talking about him being my MVP pick. But aside from that, he's been fantastic this season. So put that one game aside against Denver. He's been stellar, and I think he'll continue to be killer throughout the rest of the year. Lamar, again, maybe if you're asking me through 8 weeks, who would be my MVP? I'd probably give you Lamar. And honestly, I think he's outplaying the Ravens right now. And the Ravens are still one of the best teams in the NFL. And a lot of people saying they're the second best team in the AFC. So I think Lamar is outplaying that. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if you're saying, hey, he's going to win his second MVP award. He's been fantastic throwing the ball through the air. And on top of what he does with his legs, I think this new offense has really brought an extra oomph to that offense. While they're still not executing perfectly, specifically the receiver spot, I think it's done so much to open up the field and make his life as a passer specifically that much easier. And then I think with some time, the receivers' game is going to step up. You'll see even more Zay Flowers. And Lamar Jackson's going to continue to, kind of trend upward as long as he stays healthy. Then Tua comes in at 3. He's one of the top, leaders in the league in passing yards. That offense is insane. He's going to have gaudy numbers. And if the Dolphins, maybe win the AFC East out from underneath Buffalo, I think this argument could be made. I think that's a little bit of a steep climb. And also, we got to see the Dolphins do it in these big games against, teams like the Eagles, like the Buffalo Bills. We need to see it in a big moment against a big-time opponent. But if that starts to, happen in the second half, totally could see him winning MVP. And then Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts specifically with the tush push, the amount of rushing touchdowns he gets. Lazy voters are just going to say who had most touchdowns. Okay, Jalen Hurts did, so he's my MVP, blah, blah, blah. Kind of almost real-life AI thinking. But that being said, like, even if the Eagles haven't played a perfect game yet, and even if it's like inflated touchdown numbers because of the tush push, Jalen Hurts is still pretty good. Like, I still think of him as a top 5 to top 7 quarterback in the league. He was top 5 in my preseason QB rankings. I have not had that thought waver whatsoever. He's been fantastic, specifically targeting A.J. Brown. We got to see a little bit more of the deep passing stuff to Devontae Smith against the Washington Commanders. And of course, those rushing touchdowns. That's a huge part of the offense. And you know what? Maybe it should be banned. Maybe it shouldn't. I'm kind of in the camp that says, you know what? Philadelphia executes it better than everyone else. No one else really has it down like they do. I don't think it should be banned. But Jalen Hurts is a big reason why that goes, right? Like, the fact that we're having to have a conversation, it's just like the Mel Blunt rule. Like, if you're good enough to institute a rule change, respect. I got to respect that. So the fact that we're having this conversation about, is the tush push, truly a football play? Like, should we get rid of it? I think Jalen Hurts deserves some credit there, and got to give him some respect, put him in this MVP conversation. And then Joe Burrow at 5. I mean, look, the Bengals have they've been hot over the last 2 games we got to see. We had awesome performance, bye week, and then their best game of the season so far against San Francisco. That trend continues. He was on my preseason MVP watch. I think he was my preseason MVP. I have the preseason, selection for the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. So if they're going to continue where they left off last Sunday, he's got to be on this list. And honestly, maybe he should be my prediction moving forward to be the winner, assuming what we saw against San Francisco is the trend moving forward. So a lot of football left to be played. These are just my midseason award picks. So love to hear yours down below in the comment section. Who's your MVP? Who's your coach of the year? And also, like, what do you think about my picks? Like, tell me if I'm off. If you think I'm off, let me hear it down below. Just do so respectfully. I respond to just about every comment. So tell me where you think my arguments fall in their face. I'd love to have that little bit of back and forth with you down below in the comment section. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, want to see more football content like this. But until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.